Before you can begin replicating your data, there are a couple things you'll need to do in Azure. You'll need to get an Azure subscription and modify some default settings in the portal. You will also need to decide how you want storage accounts to be created and install a ZCA. Finally, you'll need to determine what types of recovery disks you'll use when you create your VPGs. Let's look at each of these in a little more detail. The first component required to begin your Zerto Azure installation is an Azure subscription. The Azure subscription is where Azure resources and Azure services are located. The resources and services vary upon region. To get an Azure subscription, sign into the Azure portal, search for Subscriptions and select Add. Fill in the information based on your business needs and click Create. Zerto uses virtual machine scale sets in Azure for replication and recovery operations. There are default Azure subscription limitations which need to be changed to achieve Zerto's full native scale capabilities. You'll need to increase the default number of VMs per region per subscription from 20 to 50. You'll also need to increase the number of VMs per series. Cores per subscription per region needs to at least be 50 for DS1v2 series. Zerto will use these as workers to optimize replication and recovery operations. Set the default number of resource groups per subscription to 800. Zerto recommends changing the Azure defaults prior to setting up protection of your data. You'll also need a storage account to install Zerto. It is recommended for each ZCA instance to use a separate storage account. You can either create your own storage accounts prior to installing the ZCA or have the installer create one for you. The installer creates a ZCA using unique numbers and letters. If your environment requires multiple ZCAs, creating uniquely named storage accounts ahead of time can help you keep your segregations clear. The Azure Storage Account contains all Azure Storage data objects, blobs, files, queues, tables, and disks. There are two Azure Storage objects that Zerto leverages in particular, Block Blob and Page Blob. Each protected virtual machine has its own journal in Azure. This is stored in block blobs. The checkpoints are written to the block blobs for the specified journal history and then applied to the replica volumes residing in Page Blob storage. Protected volumes are recovered in Azure as VHD disks in a page blob. Virtual machines with disks that are less than 1 GB are recovered with disks of 1 GB. Prior to setting up replication, it is recommended that you go through environment sizing to ensure you plan for enough storage to meet your needs. Before setting up your VPGs, you'll want to decide which disk options are right for you, both from a cost and performance perspective. Zerto offers 3 options for recovery disks within Azure. These options are as follows: Standard Managed HDD, Standard Managed SSD, and Premium Managed SSD. Price increases with increased performance. Please note that the recovery disks available vary per Azure region and version of Zerto, so check the field notice documentation for more information. Zerto can protect any VM running in Azure as long as the VM is in the same region as the ZCA and that VM is running using disks that are either Managed Standard HDD, Managed Standard SSD, or Managed Premium SSD. Once you set up your Azure subscriptions, create your storage accounts, size your environment, and decide on which disk options are right for your environment, you'll be ready to install Zerto in your environment.